Look at the world long enough and you start to notice something. Some places don't follow the rules, not the laws of man, the laws of physics, geology, common sense. Today we're talking about three of them. A tower of rock that rises out of nowhere, a boulder that defies gravity, and a city built by hands that maybe weren't human. Let's start in Wyoming. Devil's Tower. You're driving through northeastern Wyoming, flat land, open sky, prairie grass going in every direction. And then you see it, rising out of the earth like something pushed it up from below. Devil's Tower. It rises 867 feet from its base. That's nearly 900 feet of sheer vertical rock, standing over 1,200 feet above the river below. And it doesn't build up slowly. It just appears out of flat ground, a column of stone standing alone. Your brain doesn't know how to process it at first. You keep driving toward it, and it keeps getting bigger and bigger. Way bigger than you thought. When you finally stand at the base, you have to lean back just to see the top. So how does something like this exist? Here's the geology. About 50 million years ago, molten rock pushed up from deep underground. It forced its way into the surrounding sedimentary rock, but it never broke through the surface. It cooled underground, slowly. As it cooled, it contracted. And when rock contracts, it cracks. But it doesn't crack randomly. It cracks in a very specific pattern. Hexagonal columns, 6 sides, over and over again. You see this in other places too. The Giant's Causeway in Ireland, Fingal's Cave in Scotland, basalt columns stacking up like pencils in a box. But Devil's Tower is different in scale. After the magma solidified, millions of years of erosion started eating away at the softer rocks surrounding it. The sedimentary layers wore down, the river carved through, the land dropped away. But the tower stayed. Because igneous rock is harder, denser. It takes a lot longer to erode. So now you have this massive column standing alone. The surrounding land eroded around it. The tower didn't. The columns on Devil's Tower are enormous. Some of them are 6 feet across, and they run vertically from base to summit, which is why the sides of the tower look like someone bundled 1,000 pillars together and stood them upright. From a distance, it almost looks man-made. That's not an accident. That's geometry. That's physics. Crystal structures following mathematical rules millions of years before humans figured out what math was. Now here's where it gets interesting. The tower is sacred to at least 20 Native American tribes. The Lakota call it Bear Lodge. The Cheyenne have their own name. The Kiowa have a story about it. In many of those stories, a bear is involved. A great bear chasing children or people. They climb a rock. They pray. The rock rises. The bear tries to climb it. Its claws scratch the sides. Those scratches become the columns you see today. Different tribes, different versions. Same bear, same scratch marks. Is it a coincidence that the columns look like claw marks? Maybe, probably, but you understand why the story formed that way. When something doesn't fit your framework, you build a new one. In 1906, Teddy Roosevelt declared Devil's Tower the first national monument in American history. Climbers started reaching the summit in 1893. Today, thousands of people climb it every year. They wedge their hands and feet into the cracks between columns and work their way up. It is not easy, but people do it. From the top, you can see for miles. The Belle Fourche River below, the Black Hills in the distance, and just this weird awareness that you're standing on something that came from deep inside the earth. Something that was never supposed to be visible. Something that was just supposed to cool down underground and stay hidden forever. Erosion had other plans. Now we go to Finland, southeastern Finland, a place called Ruokolahti. You walk through forest, birch trees, pine, quiet, cold air, and then you see it, a granite boulder, maybe 7 meters long, roughly the size of a small house, sitting on top of a smooth dome of bedrock. And here's the thing, the boulder is balanced on a surface that curves away in every direction. It's not sitting in a groove, it's not wedged in a crack, it's not leaning against anything, it's balanced on a curve. The contact point between the boulder and the bedrock is small. Incredibly small for the size and weight of the rock above it. The Finns call it kummakivi, which translates to strange rock. And your first reaction when you see it is exactly that. That thing should have rolled off by now. It looks wrong. It looks like someone placed it there carefully, delicately. The way you'd balance something as a trick, but no one placed it. So how did it get there? The answer is glaciers. About 10,000 years ago, the last ice age was ending. The Scandinavian ice sheet was retreating. This was a massive sheet of ice that had covered northern Europe for thousands of years. In some places, it was kilometers thick. As it moved, it carried rocks, big ones. Boulders ripped from bedrock far away and transported by the ice like a slow conveyor belt. These transported rocks are called erratics. Because they're out of place, they don't match the geology underneath them. They came from somewhere else. Kumakivi is an erratic. The glacier picked it up, carried it, and when the ice melted, it set it down. Now here's the part that makes you stop. The glacier didn't set it down on flat ground. It set it down on a curved dome of bedrock, and somehow it balanced. The same ice that placed it smoothed the bedrock below. Glacial action polishes rock surfaces, grinds them down, makes them curved and smooth. So you have a rounded bottom surface and a curved resting surface. And by some combination of weight distribution and glacial luck, the boulder landed in a stable position. Stable enough to last 10,000 years. Think about what that means. 10,000 years of freeze and thaw cycles. Temperature swings, frost, rain, earthquakes, the geological noise of an entire continent adjusting after the ice retreated. And it hasn't moved. That's not luck in any normal sense of the word. That's a system that found equilibrium and refused to leave it. There are other glacial erratics around the world. Some are famous, the Madison Boulder in New Hampshire, the Big Rock in Alberta, Canada, plenty more in Scandinavia. But Kumakivi has something the others don't, that curve. That obvious impossibility when you look at it. Other erratics sit on flat ground, you understand them. Heavy rock placed on flat surface. Fine. Kumakivi makes you want to push it. To see if it tips, to test the thing. And reportedly, you can't. Multiple people have tried. It doesn't budge. That contact point, small as it looks, is sitting in the exact right place. The center of gravity is dead center over the support point. It's essentially a perfect balance set by a glacier, held for 10,000 years. The Finns treat it as a natural wonder. It's protected, there's a small trail to it. People come from across Finland and from other countries just to stand next to it and feel that cognitive dissonance. The thing that looks fake. The thing that looks placed. The thing that physics says should have fallen by now. It hasn't. That's worth a trip through the Finnish forest. Mycenae. Now we go back in time, way back. Greece, the northeastern Peloponnese, a site called Mycenae. It's one of the oldest known civilizations in Europe, and it was discovered or rediscovered in the 19th century. Before that, people knew it existed only from Homer's poems, the Iliad, the Odyssey. Homer called it rich in gold, he called it a great city, a center of power. Scholars for a long time assumed Homer was exaggerating, doing what poets do, making things bigger and more impressive than they were. Then Heinrich Schliemann showed up. He was a German businessman with an obsession for ancient myths. He believed they were real, not metaphors, not stories, real. He dug at Troy and found it, or something very much like it. Then he dug at Mycenae, and he found it. Not a myth, not a poet's invention, a real city, built more than 3,000 years ago, with walls that still stand today. Now let's talk about those walls. The walls of Mycenae are built from stones that are enormous. We're talking individual blocks weighing multiple tons. Some estimates go much higher, blocks that required significant engineering just to move, let alone stack. The ancient Greeks themselves looked at these walls and didn't believe humans built them. They had a word for it: Cyclopean masonry. Cyclopean, as in cyclops, as in giant, one-eyed monsters from myth. Because as far as the ancient Greeks were concerned, no ordinary human being could have moved these stones. It had to be giants. Think about that. The ancient Greeks, the people who built the Parthenon, who developed philosophy and mathematics and early engineering, those people looked at Mycenae and said, "We didn't build this. Someone bigger did." The walls are up to 8 meters thick. That's about 26 feet. And the stones fit together, without mortar. They were shaped and placed so precisely that they support each other by geometry and weight. This technique, polygonal masonry without mortar, is incredibly difficult to do well. And the people at Mycenae did it at a massive scale. The most famous entrance is the Lion Gate, built around 1250 BCE. 2 stone lions or lionesses carved in relief above the entrance. Heads gone now, lost over the millennia, but the bodies remain, flanking a central column, symbolizing power. This is the oldest surviving monumental sculpture in Europe. It's about 3,000 years old, and it's still standing. Pass through that gate and you're walking where the Mycenaean kings walked. The shaft grave Schliemann found inside the walls contained gold masks, weapons, jewelry, treasure. One mask he called the Mask of Agamemnon. Agamemnon, the king who led the Greeks to Troy in Homer's poems. Schliemann was convinced it was his. Modern archaeologists think the math doesn't quite work. The mask is likely older than Agamemnon would have been. But the mask is real. The gold is real. The grave it came from is real. This was a civilization, a powerful one, a wealthy one. And then it disappeared. Around 1200 BCE, Mycenae collapsed. along with pretty much every other major Bronze Age civilization in the Eastern Mediterranean. The Hittites, the Egyptians lost power. Cities across the region were abandoned or destroyed. Historians call it the Bronze Age collapse. Something happened, something catastrophic and widespread. Drought, famine, invasion, migration, possibly all at once. We don't fully know. What we do know is that within a few generations the writing disappeared. The trade networks collapsed, the palace economies fell apart. Greece entered what historians call the Greek Dark Ages. Centuries of reduced population, reduced complexity, reduced everything. And the walls of Mycenae stood empty. Centuries passed. New Greeks grew up who had no memory of what Mycenae was, who had never seen writing, who didn't know their ancestors had built great cities. They walked past those massive walls and told themselves stories about giants. That's what happens when a civilization forgets itself. The evidence is still there, the walls are still standing, but the knowledge of how they were built is gone. So you invent Cyclops. Eventually, Homer wrote down the old stories. Or compiled them, or something. We don't entirely know how the Iliad came to exist, but it preserved enough to point the way. Schliemann followed the pointer. Today, you can walk through the Lion Gate, walk the ruins of the palace, stand where a Bronze Age king stood and looked out over the Argolid plain. You can put your hand on stones that have been in place for 3,000 years, and if you know the history, you feel the weight of it. Not just the weight of the stones, the weight of everything lost, the knowledge, the people, the language, the ships that sailed from this harbor, all of it gone, just the walls left. So what do these three places have in common? They don't fit. Devil's Tower doesn't fit the flat Wyoming plain around it. Kumakivi doesn't fit on the surface it's resting on. Mycenae doesn't fit the story humans told themselves about their own history. Each one of them forced a reckoning. The people who saw Devil's Tower first didn't have geology. They had the scratch marks. They had the bear. They built a story that made room for the impossible. The people who saw Kumakivi couldn't explain it. They still barely believe it when they see it. The science explains how, but your eyes still reject it. The ancient Greeks looked at Mycenae and said giants, because the alternative, that humans just like them had built something they couldn't build, was harder to accept. We do this constantly. When something doesn't fit our model of what's possible, we either expand the model or we invent an explanation that makes the thing fit. Cyclops. Bears with giant claws. Magic. Sometimes the science comes later and clears it up, sometimes it doesn't. But the places remain. The tower stands, the boulder balances, the walls hold. And if you go to any of these places and stand there in person, something happens that doesn't happen when you just read about them. You feel the scale, you feel the time. You feel how small and recent you are in comparison. And that feeling, that specific feeling, is one of the best things this planet has to offer. Go find it.